Coming to you straight from the Rio Grande and beyond. Broadcasting to the four corners of the globe. So grab your seat, your coffee, or your sundowner.
Okay, everybody, here we go.
On point, as always. This is Gloves Off. Gloves Off.
Wherever you call home, we are there. In favorite places. Large spaces. For many homes, we have coverage that fits the way you live. And with our home systems protection, you can cover major home appliances and more. We cover more type of homes than ever. Get the coverage you and your family deserves. For a free no obligation quote, visit us online or simply give us a call.
We're back at you in Gloves Off, and today we have a great guest, Grandmaster Jose Burgos, and we're touching base on martial arts in general. What's going on with everything, you know? How are we doing today, my brother? It's good to have you.
I am doing fantastic. How about yourself?
Good, good. Texas is heating up. You know, we're in 107, 105, 106. So it's that type of weather we're getting right now. You know, it's summer. How's
getting here in the same. It's in Florida. I'm in Apollo Beach, Florida for the summer in the Martial Arts School of Survival with Grandmaster Willie Cintrone. And we're here for the summer until August that I go back to Colorado.
Oh, well, awesome. That's awesome. That's good stuff. You know, everybody's been kind of wondering what's happening with martial arts. Since you've been doing martial arts for a very long time.
37 years.
Yeah, and a lot of individuals come and go. You know that. A lot of martial arts schools pop up. 5 years later, they're no longer around. The lease expires, they're no longer around. And then there's some that stay in certain areas and they become part of the community. Let's talk about that.
I believe also the commercialization, I don't know if that's the word, but what would be a good word? The oversaturating the market with what we refer to today as McDojos, where we're selling the belts instead of not giving them because that's a bad word in the martial arts, instead of recognizing who earns them. That's a better way to explain it. You know, I think the golden era of martial artists is gone. That was the 80s and the 70s. You know, the era of Van Cleef and Black Dragon, Chuck Norris. And, you know, that era is gone. Then when obviously MMA came in the 90s, and it did this great shift, you know, of what is a sport against what is martial arts. I think that's where the decline came through, where we can still have the sport without losing the essence of what is martial arts and what is martial arts nowadays compared to what it was in the 70s, 80s, and even 90s, early 90s. From the mid 90s on, I want to be more specific, 92, 93, with the introduction of MMA. I think that's where the decline of the arts came through.
Yeah, I think you're correct. And I'm not knocking MMA in the cover blanket because you have some great athletes there, but I think we have to separate the athletes from the trend setters. You know, you have the guys that are fighting and they're just like a pro boxer. You have those guys that are giving it legitimacy and they're going to that. They're tough guys and they're great athletes. Blessings to them, and I hope they make a lot of money and they make a lot of names for themselves. But there's a lot of schools out there that are popping up. You got guys that don't even have a regular yellow belt technique level, and they're out there teaching people how to hurt others, and that's where the trouble comes into play. And you see that, and I had a troubling call last week, and I'm gonna throw it out there. A father called me up and he said that he wanted to bring his kid in, and I said, sure. He goes, I told him, how old's your son? He goes, he's gonna be 3. He goes, I want him to do MMA because there's a school near you that does MMA they teach him for that. And I go, please give me the number for me to call him and for me to recommend you to that school, because I'm not going to do it. I'm sorry. I wouldn't even touch him till he's about 7, 8 years old. And he got kind of offended, but I'm like, that's nuts, teaching kids.
Lost the value.
And it's nuts teaching kids MMA at the age of 3. You know what I'm saying? You're like, really? Let him be a kid. Let him go out there. If let him, don't what, there's if there's teachers out there doing that, it's just the money grab.
Well, there's martial arts education, and then there's the sport of martial arts. I think we have to separate them. It's shameful when you go, for example, to a Shotokan school, sports karate, and you ask him, for example, who is Gichin Funikochi, which is a basic question, and they don't know. When we go back to the basics, that's when we know when it's a sports related school or an educational institution of martial arts.
Yes.
We have a summer program. I'm working in a summer program. And the first thing I teach my kids is that we're not a daycare, we're not a playground, we are a martial arts school. And I've had parents, not the students, the parents. That's where one of the problems come. The students are motivated to take 3 times a day classes because me, as an educator that I consider myself, here in this school, we offer 3 times a day martial arts. Morning, meditation, Qigong, Tai Chi. Midday, we do personal defense. Afternoon, we do katas and forms, official class. I've had parents tell me, why are you guys teaching so much in a day? Ma'am, your kids are here for 12 hours. They should get at least 4 to 5 hours of martial arts in one day. Imagine what they're doing with these summer programs, that they're in a dojo locked up for 12 hours just watching movies and under the commercialization they have made out of our dojos daycares.
Yes.
A lot of dojos. This dojo, for example, where I'm at right now, the Martial Arts School of Survival, we're open 13 to 14 hours a day. That is fantastic. That's how it used to be. We got an adults class in the morning, adults class in the afternoon, and then official classes in the evening. Most of these commercial schools don't open until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So what are we teaching if we're half of the day closed and we're only open for 5 hours a day? What is our market? What is our demographic?
Well, a lot of them are
commercialization.
Most of them are open from 3 to 7. They're not even teaching
4 hours a day. How are you making money if you're in a storefront? Because we all know that if you got a commercial martial arts school, it's going to be near a nail salon, right next to a supermarket, in the strip mall. That's martial arts science. We've been practicing this since the 80s. How come? Back in the day, I remember, we used to be open all day. Fitness in the morning, yoga in the afternoon, martial arts. Now it's just 3 to 7, like we mentioned.
And you see the difference. Before you used to get people
the commercialization of the arts, the saturation of the arts. And of course, social media doesn't have exposing out there in social media is less than desirable. So what example do we have for people to follow nowadays when we don't have no more Chuck Norris? We don't have no more Van Cleef. We don't have no more Michael J. White to have it follow. The nearest thing we got nowadays is Cobra Kai.
You're absolutely correct. And it's that, I understand the business aspect of it. I understand that once you open up a business, it has to be run next to business. You have to pay rent. You have to pay electricity. You have your overhead. You have everything else that comes into play. And a lot of people do not understand that. And you see that throughout. They think it's a health club when they can come in at any time they want, or they think that it's a babysitting service. And when you tell them it's not a health club, they get offended because they want to come in anytime they want, do whatever they want, dress the way they want, come in do whatever they want. And it's not that way. It's not you come in here, while you're teaching class and just jump around, do whatever you want. You have to follow a class. They have not separated the fact that in a martial arts school, you can have a kids class, you can have a competition class, you can have an adults class, then you can have your sport combat class with your serious players that are playing. You can have all that in a school. Yes, you can. But people need to understand separation of classes. An institution, like you said, an academy, an institute is what? They teach English, they teach a language, English, they'll teach you a science, they'll teach you a mathematics, they'll teach you whatever it is. And if it's an institute of, let's say, radio and DJ, they're going to teach you how to set up everything in radio. They're going to teach you how to use the mic. They're going to teach you how to set up everything. Everything's going to be in their own individuality in classes. It's not all jumbled up together. And that's what people do not understand. And I think you and I've talked to many others throughout the states, and that's the main concern is that what's happening. The legitimate players are like saying, hey, what's going on? And you have the Johnny-come-latelys that don't know what they're doing because they bought a certificate or don't even have a certificate or don't even have formal training. They're just out there, I was in there 2 years and now I'm going to go teach whatever I want. And you're like, a little bit different.
I was on a mission for like 2 years that I was doing like my own little market research, and I was going to take these free classes that everybody offers. Free classes, 1 week free class here, 2 weeks free class there. And something that I always do, I always wear a martial arts shirt for these free classes intentionally. In 2 years, you know how many people ask me, do you have a martial arts background? 2. 1 wasn't even the instructor, was his wife. His wife interrupted the class, the free class, and she was, come here. What are your intentions here? She grabbed me by surprise. I was like, you did your homework, didn't you? She said, yeah, I know you were an instructor. I saw your Facebook. Ma'am, you got my respect. I've been to school where I obviously have a shirt, martial arts shirt, and they come and start teaching you basic punches, not respecting the demographic. If I see you come inside my school and I see that you have a jiu-jitsu, a tansudo, a qigong shirt, something that indicates to me, and me as a martial artist, looking at you, analyzing you, and I say, wait a minute. This guy knows something. What are you doing here? It happened to me today with Grandmaster Solomon. Solomon doesn't know me from a hole in the wall. And this guy looked at me from head to bottom, looked at me and he said, you used to box. You know something. You're from the Bronx. Sir, are you psychic? Just by looking and hearing me speak. A lot of these places, they're only about that money, because immediately after I finish the class, can we sign you up? Can we sign you up? It's going to be $259, and you need $279 for the uniforms, and you need $300 for the equipment, and for a total of $997.55, and it's $239 a month. Dude, I don't even know if I like this. You know what I'm saying? Like, no education, no foundation. I went to a place where the sign said National Karate, just like that. Sign said National Karate, and something else, because there's a lot of people who start with National Karate. Their window said Krav Maga, and my free class was a Taekwondo class. Me, as an experienced martial artist, go in there and I'm like, am I going to put my kids in here? And it was for my kids. It was for my grandbabies. You go to a place like that, and that's the reason why martial arts is on a decline. Inconsistency, like you said, instructors that contradict themselves. Showing one thing and are we karate? Are we Taekwondo? Are we Krav Maga? What are we teaching here? Because it's very contradictory. We're going from Korea to the Middle East to Japan back. Like, now when you got a martial arts school, it's like a religion, non-denominational, Maybe today, like here, I teach to these guys Qigong and Tai Chi in the morning to children. Midday, we're teaching personal defense. In the afternoon is straight up Tan Sudo, Chumbi, and we're trying to make sure that they know, our students know the difference. Hey, this art came from China 2,000 years before current era. This art, it was because of the military and the culture mixture. This art came from here, transcended to here, and we did these adaptations. Now we're giving it some fundamentals, some structure, a guide.
But you said something very, 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 especially with the sign said one thing and they were teaching another. They were showing something else. They don't know the difference between the countries where the origins come in. They're not the history. That is so common right now. I went to a school in San Antonio, and it said it had a son, okay, with a praying mantis on it, with a samurai sword. The praying mantis was on top of the samurai sword, and when you walked inside, it was Taekwondo that they were taking. And I said, I thought you guys were teaching something with, you know what I'm saying? I mean, you got 3 different cultures up in your in your logo. Which one is it? And then the guy got kind of upset at the fact that I questioned him, and I go, I was just wondering if it was a kung fu school, because I haven't seen kung fu here for a while. So what are we teaching here? And then he started off. He said, we're doing MMA and we're doing something else. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I was just talking to him. I was passing by. I introduced myself. It's good to see another martial arts school. We just ate down, the noodle place down the shopping center. And I just came down here just to see how everything is. Good luck, you guys. Much peace. But people do not know the culture where the art comes from. And they don't know the history. They don't understand the origins. People say, I don't need that to learn how to fight. Granted, you don't need to learn how to fight. But you're learning an art. And if you're going to represent something and you're training for something, then you're going to end up eventually training and getting a rank in it. Then you better understand where it comes from. Now I'm seeing Thai boxing shorts with a belt around their stomach, colored belt from karate, with boxing gloves, and and on the top it says jiu-jitsu, and you're like, well, what are you? You have a karate belt, you have Thai shorts, you have boxing gloves, and you have a shirt that says jiu-jitsu. Yeah, I get it. I understand it. And I understand that there's a lot of people that want to make their own methods. But then say it's a method. You know what I'm saying? Say this is a method I studied for so long and I'm making this method and this is what I'm going to teach. That's fine and dandy.
Cross training.
But
I'm a big fan of cross training.
I'm
It's
the first one to say,
educational to me.
absolutely. So when that happens, beautiful. But when you go out there and say, "Oh, this is Taekwondo," and you're doing Krav Maga and you're doing a bunch of other stuff, well, you're
Red flag.
actually
Red flag.
absolutely, absolutely. And you know, like here, you know, with us, we teach capoeira, we teach kempo, and we teach savat. We don't teach them in a mishmash. You want to do savat class? Come to a savat class. You want to do capoeira? Come to a capoeira class. You want to do kempo? You come there. I don't mishmash anything. I don't cross anybody else. I don't go teach a savat class. Oh, we're going to do a capoeira kick, and now we're going to do. No, it doesn't happen. You're going to learn the art just like the way I learned it. Now, I have students that train in different classes. They can mix it on their own. It's going to happen when you're out on the street, but to teach it like it doesn't happen. Arts don't mix like many people think they do. Some of them might, but a lot of them don't.
Another thing I think is going on with the martial arts community also is not serious governing body or not belonging to a serious governing body. If I go to a school and they're their own school, like I know some, they're their own school, they don't belong to no organization, they don't compete, they don't go nowhere, which is all right too. A lot of schools, you know, they're very conservative, especially Chinese arts, Kung Fu. They don't like a lot of competition and all that. I can understand because of the culture. And some of them, in some of their cases, sometimes it's even the religious factor of the art. You know, I know a lot of Kung Fu practitioners that because of their Buddhist roots or their religious practices, they are kind of conservative on who they teach or how they teach.
Mhm.
But nowadays, with the commercialization and the franchises, where you don't have to have a governing body, you just have to have enough name to put that name on the front, and then you're going to buy all your equipment from the franchise. That's where the bastardization of the arts has come in, where you could actually buy a franchise without having the background. You know, it's like somebody who's not a chef wants to open a restaurant, but they don't know how to cook. You know, the same thing is happening. Davenport, Florida. Going to talk about this school because the school they closed already. We wanted their establishment. They had a big location, nice location. The father opened a martial arts school. This was 2 years ago. The instructor, the main instructor, was his son. You know how old his son was? 13. I went to take the free class. It was a Shotokan school. I have a pretty solid background in Shotokan karate and in Tansudo. Katas are very similar. Very, very, very similar. Bunkai, very similar. This kid's katas were horrible. He was teaching other kids. The kid, you could see in his face and his demeanor that he wouldn't even want to be there. Imagine me as an adult coming to get a free class from this scenario. Would I want to leave my kids there? Would I go back? I didn't go back. Then I told them, hey, I'm from up the street, from the school up the street. How much you pay rent here? To his dad. Do you think we could buy your school? I'll employ you. He didn't like that because they had a little food truck in the outside too. So they had like kind of a little business going on, which is okay. But I think the fact that the commerce, once again, going to the basic the commercialization and the bastardization of the arts have really taken away the importance and the social status of what a martial artist used to be. Back in the day, the community martial artist was a very respectable man in the community. He used to take the students that were paying, and most likely he'd take the student that didn't pay either. He'd take them both. He used to take them all. At least in my time was like that.
Yeah.
We had a couple of us that couldn't really afford the classes, but no, keep on coming. Bring me whatever you can. And then we used to, he used to get his pay anyways, but it was the heart. Now it's the money.
I do that. I got kids that have been here since they were 15 years old. They're still here, and you had to. They don't have, and they have the heart to do it. Let's push it forward. That's what we need. I understand, like that. I started teaching at a young age, and I started teaching at the age of 18, and kind of 18 really. And I started teaching because I sparred with several people, and we used to kick to the legs, and people didn't know how to kick to the legs back then. Back in the 80s, nobody kicked to the legs. If you kicked to the legs, it was a cheap shot or what have you, and blah, 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 and all that stuff. So that's how it was. So to continue my training, I was teaching other martial artists to kick to the legs. Okay. Then I left to France, and of course, and we opened up the school and so on and so forth. But there was a lot of kids out there people that didn't have. You just taught and you see them now, and you're proud they're at least good members of society. Understand? And
like somebody said, we have lost the desire to teach and train for the outcome. Now we teach and train for the income.
Absolutely. And that's, and that's what people do not understand. I started training because you needed to learn how to fight. You know what I'm saying? You had to learn how to fight. It wasn't because of anything else. And you trained because of that reason. You trained with that professor because that professor was the baddest one in town. So you're going to go train with that one because you want to be the baddest one in town as well. And people right now don't even take care about that. There's one guy came over and he says, can I bring my kids over? Do you have a program for kids? And I go, well, we have some kids classes that we have, and they're from this time to this time. And go, so you don't pick them up from school? No, you don't, because this other place over here has some coloring books for this and that. And like you said, it's a babysitting service. And I go, I don't babysit anybody. And and people need to understand the difference. If you want to, it's a lot cheaper to pay a martial arts school to take care of your kid 3 times a week or twice a week than a babysitter would, or even a kindergarten would.
That and you're completely 100% right on that, because that's another thing. Our prices. Some schools are charging ridiculous prices. I know a school in Colorado that charges almost $300 a month for schools twice a week. And the tuition to start is almost $1,000 to start, which is all right. They got a class, they got a building full of students, and their classes are halfway decent. I mean, structural. I went in there and I was like, okay, this looks like a martial arts school. However, they were charging like a private martial arts school. I'm talking about the tuition a year. They treated it like a school. Schools, the year started in August, finished in May, then you go to summer camp. If you don't want to be in summer camp, you got to wait until August to start again with your studies. I was like, whoa, this is good. But the price was way outreachable. Imagine if you got 2 kids. That's $700 a month. Now, We have the babysitter McDojos that charge $125 a week. They got your kids until 7 o'clock at night, and they're not teaching them nothing. Those are the ones that actually bastardize the art. We got these ones here. And
you said $100. You got $125 a week. That's basically $500 a month. That's still cheaper than babysitter service or kindergarten. Yeah. The kindergarten for that price is it's close to between $750 to $1,250 in any given kindergarten.
Sorry about the noise in the background. I got some of them creatures that we're talking about right now. I got some summer prank. However, I started volunteering here. We were doing 2 classes a day. Now we do 3. And once again, it was curious to me that one of the parents actually complained about it. She was like, how many classes you giving these kids a day? I was like, sometimes we do 3 for a total of like 5 hours a day. She said, you guys are teaching them too much. I was like, ma'am, this is the first time I hear a parent complaining about a child taking too much martial arts classes in a day. Yep. Today she came in on some, oh, my child is misbehaving. Now you want the extra education, huh? Sometimes it's not even the students who are making a mockery of the art. It's the parents.
It's the parents. You see, most parents, and that's something else, most parents nowadays are the moms that sign them up. And like you said, next to the nail salon, next to the grocery store, next to the hair salon. And the mom has to go get groceries, what have you then, besides whatever it is, whatever excuse. And they're the ones who are going to look at it. And they don't know the difference between sumo wrestling and capoeira, taekwondo and scuba diving. They have no idea what's what. Everything's martial arts. Everything is the same thing. And so that type of mentality, they think that they can go to any school and command it just like the school that was the McDojo. And then they come into a place that's an institute and say, you have to teach it just like the McDojo. Yeah, I've had students leave our school. They've been here for 6 months, and they go to the McDojos down the street, and all of a sudden they're wearing a red belt or a brown belt or even a black belt, because that's the difference of technique that the kid is doing. And people need to understand the difference. It's quality. You have to do your research on the instructor, do the research on the art. It depends on what you want it for. If you want a babysitting service, there is babysitting services, and there's plenty of them. Okay. And then you want the kid to actually learn how to defend themselves for the future, then there's schools for that as well. I sent somebody the other day, wanted to do boxing, said, oh, you used to teach people boxing. Yeah, I used to have a tremendous boxing club. Tremendous. I don't teach boxing. I don't teach boxing for competition. I don't take people to the ring inside competition and run around. You know what I'm saying? No longer. I haven't done it. One, I don't have a ring. If I had a boxing ring, maybe I would. But I do not understand the difference. They want to learn to go compete the ring. And I told them, well, how old are you? Well, I'm 38 years old, and you want to do boxing? I think it's a little bit too old for you now to get in the ring, even professionally. But if you want to go, here's a phone number. I'll call them up for you. And I called up a friend of mine that teaches, and I said, hey, this guy's going to go over there, take care of him. And that's just the way it is. But I know that
I think we have a good opportunity, or we could turn this around, maybe, to put it that way. If we go back to the basics, we have some good students. But I think that once, if we unify ourselves, like the main governing bodies of this country, let's put it that way, which is not going to happen because you know how egocentristic some of us could be. Talk about myself. But I think we need a governing body or something similar that can overlook a database of some sort that could overlook credentials and certifications and ranks. Because, like you say, even on social media, it's very noticeable that some people just are making up some stuff. You see them a year ago, they were a black belt in some style, and 2 years later, they're like an eighth dan. Like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, how did that happen? Like, is that even possible?
Well, the martial arts, the fairy dust comes out, and all of a sudden they create their own style, and you're like, from where? And this was taught to you. Who's your teacher? Oh, well, no, but it was taught to me. By who? Because you just pulled it out of your ass. And you're like, really? Okay. Listen, I tell people this. Reputation follows you. In martial arts styles, fighters, instructors, the reputation follows you. If your reputation in the city or where you live is that your students are always getting their ass kicked when they go out to a bar, that's not the reputation that I want. Understand what I'm saying? Then that's the school that I don't want to go to. You know what I'm talking about. Because the kids grow up and kids start drinking and kids go out and want to have fun. Now they're in their 20s and they're going to get into trouble, and all of a sudden the names go out of, oh, I trained over here, I still train over here, or what have you. It continues. And I'm not knocking down, because martial arts is for what it is. It is what it is. You know, you have a lot of alpha-centric individuals. But if your reputation is that when you go to a tournament, your kids are always losing, or you go to a tournament and the instructor's always losing, you know what I'm saying? Or you go to a boxing, kids are always getting knocked out, and you want to place your kid there, start paying attention to those things, because reputation follows you. You know, or is your school the one that everybody kind of whispers about? Don't fuck around with that guy over there, because they're the guys that are going to tear your head off. And, you know, don't mess around with those guys over there, because those guys are going to, you know what I'm saying? And you hear that. That exists in every town across the world. You hear that. And if you come from a martial arts background like you,
or those schools that the instructors don't participate, don't compete, you go to a seminar, they're always sitting down like this. Like,
or they don't allow, or they don't go to anything, or they don't want to, or what have you. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're too good for it. They're too good for it. No, what are they going to teach? Like, where's your participation? I think also another thing that we mentioned earlier in our conversation, which you mentioned it very early in our conversation, was the community presence of the martial artists is not there anymore.
It's no longer there. It's no longer
Back
there.
in the day, every parade in town, every event in town had a martial arts exhibition. You had somebody with a bow, somebody throwing knives. You had a kiosk of some kind. This is your community martial arts studio. You don't see that no more. You don't see the presence of the martial arts community out doing civil duties, helping with the elderly. Another thing, we forgot about the elderly. We forgot about the third demographic, the people who have money and want to train, the 50, the 60-year-olds. But what happened? We bring them in through the door, and we want to throw a white gi with a white belt on these people.
And we want to treat them like kids. It ain't gonna happen.
Exactly. What happened to the respect to the adults? What happened to that? Don't just throw an adult to a kid's class with a 5-year-old. It's gonna make that 50-year-old feel awkward and all weird and you know, what's your humility? No, bro. I'm paying here for an adult to teach an adult, not for an adult to teach me with a child.
or for a child to teach an adult. You know, here's,
Like I said, that kid, that 13-year-old, that was in Davenport.
you know, it's like this. You have parents that think their kids should be training with the adults. No, they don't. Kids are kids. And age groups matter because of the mentality. And parents don't understand that. And then they come out and they tell you, I'm going to drop my kid off here and I'll pick him up. No, no. The class is from this time to this time. Either you better pick him up at this time and drop him off at this time. Don't drop him off an hour before class. Don't drop him off half an hour before class. If you're going to do so, pick up the phone and say, can I drop off my kid because I have a doctor's appointment? Yes, or what have you. Yes, and more likely, most martial arts studios are going to say, yeah, don't worry about it. Bring them over, you know, but don't expect because you dropped them off early for you to start teaching them at that time. No, the class is scheduled, and people need to understand that. I say this: if the parents do not have discipline, the child will never get discipline. Don't expect it. The child might eventually become disciplined because he might end up going to the army or going to a job where they're going to mandate it. But if the father or the mother doesn't have discipline, don't expect the kid to have discipline.
That's very important point right there. A lot of these parents bring the kids in undisciplined, and they are a royal mess themselves. I told the parent one time, why don't you start training with your child? Because it seems like both of you should take advantage of this training. She got offended.
No, you're correct. You are correct. But you know, the only thing we can fix is the place that we have, and start growing from there and joining, like you said, other martial artists. Because the problems that we're having here, you're having them over there in Florida. And I know several others that are having them in New York and in Chicago and in Dallas and in California. So it's not just an isolated problem. This is something that's going on throughout the nation. So the only thing I could say is we as instructors, and if we are teaching out there, we're the only ones that can command those that are around, not command, I hate to use that word, but we can command how we teach to better that community that we have. So like you said, we have to start becoming the martial arts school of the community.
Make that presence, make that presence be felt. Start
Absolutely.
going out to community centers. And another thing, of course, that we got to pay our bills. Yes, that we, of course, capitalism is here. Everything is expensive. But, we remember back in the day, we used to do our civil service. We used to have that little free class for the community. I still do. I still offer the free class for the addicts, for the healthcare, right now, if we're not getting paid, we don't want to move.
Yep.
If there's not an incentive, of course, once again, we have to pay. Of course, we got bills. All this building costs thousands of dollars a month. But also, we have to offer that little bit to the community so the community can respond back. If the community doesn't know what we do, how can we teach what we know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You are absolutely correct. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because to me, it's kind of like preaching to the deaf, and they don't want to, it's like you mention and people just look at you like, you're crazy. No, it's happening. These issues are occurring. But I leave you with this because we're running out of time, and I know that you're going to continue. But thank you for that, because now we know that these are issues that are occurring throughout the states.
Oh yeah, it's a national problem, and it's getting into Asia too, because I've heard a lot of, especially in the Korean arts, which I have a degree on, big discrepancy in the Hapkido and the Taekwondo community between the Asian market and the American market. Big. However, we have our own set of problems here in America with the martial arts community to be jumping overseas. But a lot of people like to use the overseas guidance guide, the overseas guide here, I don't think it's going to work. Different culture, different set of rules,
Absolutely.
different community. What works with the Asian is not going to work with the American.
Absolutely. No,
So
you're correct.
sometimes that culture shock, we gotta bring it home. Like, what are we teaching? What is our intention? What is our purpose for what we teach?
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct.
And then grab the bull to the horn like Masoyama did.
Well, we'll leave you with this. Guys, I hope this was a little educational for you. We're not here to bash any martial artists or any martial arts school. We're here to talk about the issues that are occurring right now. And hopefully you can see that because it's something that is going on throughout the country. But we'll leave you with this. You all stay safe, be safe, and the next time. Much peace. Be safe, brother.
Much peace, sir. Thank you.
So when I was working on Selena, the series for Netflix, to play the role of Abraham Quintanilla, I put on a specific amount of weight, which I was fine doing, but also realizing it could be difficult to get that weight off. I got back into my physical regimen with James Leja, but I was still having trouble with just those last amounts. And that's when I got to meet Arturo from Laredo Medical Weight Loss Clinic. And just the products that he gave me kind of put me over the edge. I feel great about myself.